Deakin University Professor of Global Islamic Politics, Greg Barton, regular on the program, joins us. Greg, we haven't heard from the new Iranian leader. What's your interpretation of him not being either seen or physically heard of?
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Steve. A bit like Monty Python's infamous parrot sketch. You do wonder whether he's alive or just resting. The fact that the only statement we've had from him was a written statement that was read on his behalf does beg the question of how seriously injured he is and what capacity he has. He apparently was in the residence that was hit when his father was killed, also his wife and his mother and some children. So, this is not over in terms of where the leadership goes. But I think the thing to understand, Steve, is even though the Iranian regime seems very hierarchical and top down with a supreme leader, actually it's well geared over decades of facing threats to function with 31 separate divisions that can function without central control. So it's actually remarkably resilient, which is not good news for the people of Iran or for us, but it's the reality we're facing.
So what's your handle on whether there is any possibility of genuine regime change to take the country back to what it was pre the Ayatollah?
Well, earlier this year, Steve, as you recall, when there were many thousands of protesters in the streets being shot dead, possibly by some accounts as many as 30,000 shot dead, we don't know. It looked like the regime had come to the end of the road and was so brittle and had lost so much public support in an economy that's in a perilous state that it was going to fail. But actually, the regime today looks stronger than it did a month ago. There is a rally around the flag effect, of course. When a country comes under attack, you say, well, better support the country. And if you don't see that that the bombing is leading to your freedom anytime soon, then people understandably say, well, better stick with the regime we have and defend our country. So I think the regime's actually, for the time being at least, reasonably strong. Where it goes from over the next year, it's this can take a long time to run through. Perhaps it is mortally wounded, but it seems to be able to carry on fighting for the next few months, and that's the really important thing. America probably is going to struggle to fight beyond the next few weeks just because of shortages of supplies of defensive missiles, the Patriot and other interceptor missiles, whereas this regime can probably throw out missiles, drones, and carry on a fight for many months to come, and the regime, for the time being at least, seems to be intact.
So your assessment of Donald Trump yesterday saying that we've won, it's all over, clearly it's not all over. History's taught us that you have to have a plan B. It doesn't seem that Donald Trump does have a plan B. I saw Barack Obama's right-hand man, Leon Panetta, on Sky yesterday saying he didn't think Trump has a plan B at all.
Look, I think that's right. There's no joy in it for anyone, Steve. I don't think Trump had a plan A, much less a plan B. He wasn't clear what the strategic plan was in the very beginning. Things seemed to be going well. He seems to have fallen into what some people describe as the escalation trap. When you have tactical success, he had that in Venezuela, he had it with the strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities middle of last year. That tactical success can make you feel like, you're unbeatable. But if you go into any sort of conflict without a strategic plan, tactical success can set you up for failure, and that seems to be what's happening.
Well, history teaches us that. You only got to look at Afghanistan, don't you, Greg?
Yeah, Afghanistan, Iraq. Afghanistan, it was very understandable that something had to be done immediately, the 9/11 attacks, and it was not surprising when we went to Afghanistan that the problem was for 20 years we didn't have a clear plan. We kept telling ourselves it's going to be okay, and people of Afghanistan are paying the price for that today, and Al-Qaeda and Islamic State continue to be a threat. Iraq, of course, was worse. There was more time to plan, and there was better planning. This excursion, as the president calls it, in Iraq doesn't seem to have had anything like the planning that, in Iran, doesn't seem to have had anything like the planning that went into the 2003 invasion of Iraq. It seems to have been sort of made up on the fly without a clear sense of where they're going. And that's a very dangerous thing to be doing. I mean, there has been spectacular tactical success. The Israeli penetration of the Iranian intelligence has let them get very accurate targeting, but that doesn't guarantee you get the results that you want.
Just finally, I mean, when Australians turn up at a petrol station and diesel's costing them $2.70 a litre, this war is going to become very unpopular very quickly. What did you make of Australia's contribution to the effort with this plane, radar aircraft, and some, we're told, missiles? What do you make of that?
I think sending the wedge-tail airborne early warning system to the Gulf makes sense. You can understand it. There is a sort of a logic to it. I think what doesn't make sense is the International Energy Agency has told us, Steve, that we should have 90 days of fuel reserves. We would be lucky to have not 3 months, but 3 weeks at the moment. That's a mistake on our own half. We could have done more about that. I think the fact that we're now getting involved with this aircraft and a small supporting team, I think it's just the reality that we're having to respond to a situation we didn't make. But we should have done more when it came to preparing ourselves in terms of resilience, in terms of fuel reserves. And I think that's one lesson we have got to take from this.
Good on you, Greg. Welcome back to Australia. I'll talk to you again soon. Greg Barton there.